Hello everybody, welcome back to Fireside Chats with AR Farina. And today in Mansfield Park we're going to talk about classism. The last two videos have kind of alluded to it. We're going to talk about members of the clergy, members of the military, and how they're perceived. But look, all of Austen is about classism. Sure, this book talks about racism, it talks about slavery. Sanderson does as well. And there's a few other, I think, times where when you read it closely, I think when we get to Northanger Abbey, we'll have some conversation about that too. But for the most part, we see like a lot of white people in Austen world. It was England in the 1800s, 1700s and 1800s. So that's who Jane saw. She was a middle class white woman. That's who she mostly associated with. But class was for real. And she does obviously address race. She addresses these things. But boy, is classism on full display. And specifically in this book, there's a very strict hierarchy, and we see it inside the Ward sisters. So there's Lady Bertram, there's Mrs. Norris, and there's Francis Price Sr. And they all start the same. They're all the Wards. But the opening line of the book is how Maria Ward was lucky enough to catch the eye of Thomas Bertram, and that was it. And it's not catch the eye, I don't remember what it is. Like, she captured his imagination, maybe is what it says. And so it starts right off telling you what happened. And so she's now here. They're all the same, these three sisters. Boom. Second one, interestingly enough, Mary's a member of the clergy. So we have this thing. Birth order also determines this, as we discussed. So as the second brother, he becomes a member of the clergy. The second sister marries a member of the clergy. Now, there's nothing that stopped Mrs. Norris from, whose first name we don't know, Ward, from becoming Mrs. something else. But she married a clergyman, and she has a very respectable life. Her husband ends up becoming the clergyman for Mansfield, so of course she's around her sister all the time, and she's around her nieces and nephews, and so she sort of, in addition to being like pious by proximity, she's also sort of rich by proximity. She gets to be at Mansfield Park all the time. She can have lunch there whenever she wants. She can have dinner there whenever she wants. She can stay there whenever she wants. It's her sister's house. It's her brother-in-law's house, and so she sort of has these things by proximity. Then there's Frances, who marries William Price, who's a sailor, and things don't go well, and so they're kind of stuck in this dirty sort of lower class sailor town, and they have 10 kids, and they're poor, and life is hard for them. And we see this really distinct class in this same family, and it's not just that, like, it's all truly just a matter of right place, right time. Could it have been that if Tom Bertram had met Mrs. Norris, the middle ward, and liked her best, then maybe he would have fallen in love with her and she becomes Lady Bertram, maybe. Or if he had met Fran, we don't know. It doesn't matter because that's not what we're saying. But the interesting thing about it is that we have this birth order hierarchy and this class order hierarchy in the same family. And like Lady Bertram less so because she's so kind of checked out. But even they kind of look down on like, oh, poor Frances. And they don't try to lift her up because she married a soldier, or a sailor who then gets injured, and so he's not an honorable sailor. And we'll have more when we get to other books. We'll talk about how other people perceive, the people members of the military and how they see that in the hierarchy of class. But we see that the Bertrams, they respect it. And so when they meet William, they really respect it and glad that he's a soldier. So that elevates him. But if he had done something else, if he had then become a merchant marine, say, or if he had just worked at a shop or learned a trade, he would be considered less than he is as a soldier. He moves up the class standing. He moves up his social standing by the work he does, but also by the attitude he has. So because Fanny's the one who moves from this lower class and moves to Mansfield Park, there's always this threat that they're always like, we're going to send her back. And when she does get sent back, spoiler alert, it is really hard on her. It's not hard on her in the way that they think it is, like she's spoiled and she's not going to know what to do if there's somebody. No, she's sad because she misses them because that's sort of been her family. Like she spent all these years away from her family and sort of have to go, with the Bertrams and then to go home. So it's more of a heartbreak than it is like, oh, I'm spoiled and I'm rich. She's going to learn her lesson. It wasn't that. She didn't care because it didn't matter to her. the class was irrelevant to her, but it's relevant to everybody else. And Austen's commentary on class is that it matters, it's real, and it's a constant fight to move up in it. But if you're comfortable in your station, like Jane was, she chose not to get married. She could have been married and could have risen her station, but she chose to stay single, and knowing that her father and then her brothers would have to essentially take care of her the rest of her life. So she wasn't going to be uncomfortable, but she was never going to have all the things in the world. But she made that choice and said, no, I'm okay to be firmly lower middle class or to be lower class or to be whatever, and have your pride and have a sense of self, as opposed to like scraping and clawing. And that's what we see in this book, is that Mary Crawford, once Edmund decides he wants to be a member of clergy, she sees that as below his station. That's lowering his class, so she doesn't want to be with him. He's a great guy and he's a catch, because now he's going to be a lower class, we won't want to. And so I do think classism is alive and well. I see it almost every day. I see it the way that people are treated, the way that they dress. I see it the way that they treated the place that they shop. I mean, this is just, you can't get away from it online. And so here we are, hundreds of years ago, Austen pointing out the importance of class, the brutalness of class, the way that class can really define us, and it's not always good. And we really need to read these books closely and look at the lessons, look at Austen's lessons on class, and say, like, how do we apply those? How do we learn from that? Because you fall in love with these characters, and you're like, oh, in the world, I wouldn't be allowed to associate with that person because he's above my station or she's below my station, which is crazy bananas. But there it was. I'll see having the conversation without having it. That's the best thing about art, right? Is you have the conversation, but Jane Austen doesn't have. She's not writing an essay. She's still writing fiction. So you have to look for it, which I love. So anyway, that's the thought on class in Mansfield Park. Love to know your thoughts on class in this book or anywhere. So thanks, everybody. I'll see you soon.